Hi, I'm Brett Boniface, and thanks for checking out my website, Ag Tech Services. And you clicked on the Variable Rate Technologies tab, and I'm here to tell you a little bit more about it, go a little more in depth. This basically, variable rate technology basically applies to chemical applications, planting, and fertilizing. We'll start with fertilizing first. Basically, the way this works is once you have a good understanding of what you need to go in the ground to produce the most optimal yield for the seed that you're planting, no matter what your crop is, you can run your fertilizer rig through the field, and with the help of GIS, that's Geographical Information Software, it keeps track of where you are and changes up your rates depending on where you are in the field. So for example, I always like to use the example of pivot corners. A lot of people still have pivot corners. Some people will put a little swing arm out to irrigate the pivot corner every once in a while, but for the most part, there's a lot of those out there. Well, that's basically dry land. And so for dry land, you don't need as much fertilizer because you're not expecting as much yield. And so once you hit that dry land patch, it's going to bump that rate down so that you're not basically wasting fertilizer that's just going to become volatile and not utilized, and it's going to hit you in the input costs. So now that we understand that, I do want to kind of highlight something that you probably maybe wouldn't think would be showcased in this video, and that's soil sampling. How do we know how much of fertilizer and other inputs that we need to make that seed, that hybrid, grow to its maximum potential, to its optimal yield? You really can't do that without soil sampling. You need to know what goes in there. Variable rate technology is great. You'll know exactly what you're putting in the ground, but if you don't know what you need, it's kind of a double-edged sword here. They pair very well together, and you need to know what you're putting in the ground. So I would suggest if you're looking at investing in variable rate technology, definitely do some soil sampling. This can be done, every year, every other year, every third year. That's kind of the maximum. I'll explain that more in that video. I'm sure you'll click on that later, or if you already haven't. Now, this technology can also be used during spraying. When you're spraying for weeds, making chemical applications, you can have sensors that identify weeds and only spray when it senses a weed, basically, which it's a little bit different than your broad application where you're spraying everything, every single pass. It's the same rate. The entire field is getting the same rate. So you could potentially save money on the chemical that you're spraying too. Lastly, this is really my favorite one, is the planting, and I've had a lot of experience with this, using variable rate technology with planting. Planting, it gives you a lot of real-time benefits, okay? Just like with fertilizer, and if you're spraying, it's going to let you know when that rate bumps up or down. Okay, so you'll get to see that in real time. But what's the most important thing about planting? It's getting the seed in the ground, right? So there could be a number of different problems. If you've ever ran till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning with a planter, it started earlier in the day, you're going to encounter problems. You're going to get those rows that stop planting for whatever reason. You're going to get just malfunctions. Something doesn't work. Maybe your starter fertilizer isn't working. Maybe you don't have enough vacuum. Maybe there's just a bunch of mud. Maybe you just got into a wet patch and there's a bunch of mud up in that seed tube. It's going to alert you when you have a problem and you're not planting to that optimal population that you want for that seed, that hybrid. That is so invaluable. I really love that feature. It's a real time. It's imagine getting to the end of the field, making a pass, making another pass, going to fill up with seed, and realizing, wow, I've got 2 seed boxes over here that are half full still, and my other ones are empty. Haven't been planting. And if you didn't realize that, it's probably too late. You could probably try to do the math or dig in the ground and figure out which rows you didn't plant. But realizing that in real time, it's such a time saver. And planting season is super time consuming as it is. And so it's super important. It is very, very helpful. Now, all of these technologies, it's going to allow you to map what you've done. So at the end of the year, you're going to be able to look at basically how you did. It's a little report card saying, hey, this is what was applied in every single area of the field, and you're going to be able to compare that to your soil sampling, to your yield mapping, to any other application, precision ag application that you have, because of GIS. Basically, that allows you to comprehensively put all of these pieces together, analyze them, and it also helps you, like in the case of soil sampling. Okay, if you're soil sampling, if you're saying you need more fertilizer over here but not over here, that mapping can be applied to when you're making your rounds in the tractor fertilizing. Okay, that's what helps the fertilizer rig apply the most optimal amount of fertilizer, and so on and so forth. And then at the end of the year, you get done with your planning, you can see how you did there. When you get to yield mapping, that's your final report card. That's the bottom line. And you can kind of compare and contrast. You can look, you can be like, okay, why did we do so bad in this area of the field or this area? What was the reason? And it's a start. It's a start to recognizing those troubled areas and figuring out solutions. Now I want to end with this. Obviously, this might be my longest video, and that's because, in my opinion, and the research that I've done, and all my experience that I've had with it, I feel like this is the most bang for your buck when it comes to precision ag technology, from the initial cost to the annual cost to the savings, and obviously the yield advantage. Now, those kind of go hand in hand. And so I know when you're looking at the numbers, you're seeing these percentages or these dollar amounts per acre that you could possibly see in return. But let's just talk about this. Let's put it in layman's terms. Okay, if you have a certain amount of input cost for 1 year, and you're putting in too much fertilizer. Well, too much fertilizer to a certain extent can actually hurt your crop. Too much nitrogen is not a good thing. And you're spending more on it, you're making less yield. Now, say you switch over to this variable rate and it helps you to only use what you need in fertilizer, and it gives that plant just enough to grow to its potential, and you realize more yield. Okay, this is something that will vary from farm to farm. It'll kind of depend on how far you are off right now, and it's not your fault. You're doing the best you can, but without proper soil sampling and variable rate technology during planting, and then yield mapping at the end, it's hard to realize if you're putting all the right inputs in, if you were doing everything right, if you were planting the correct populations, and then getting the results that you want. So I just wanted to end with that. In my opinion, this is a really great place to start if you have not implemented any precision ag technology before. But I do want to reiterate that it really pairs well with soil sampling, and also yield mapping. Emphasis on the soil sampling. If you don't know what you need to put into the soil, it kind of makes it tough to justify buying variable rate technology. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks so much for visiting my website again, and we'll see you in the next video.